RCR's top prospect is set to make his NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series debut, and let's take a look at the chase bubble heading into the final 4 weeks of the NASCAR Cup Series regular season. How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Talkin NASCAR. I'm your host, Andrew. Hope you're all having a great day. Took a couple of days off from the show. Didn't have much news to talk about, but now we're back here on a Wednesday with some news to cover from the last couple of days and even to preview for the upcoming 4 races to end the NASCAR regular season. The chase is right around the corner, so we're going to take a look at all 3 series and their chase standings heading into this weekend at Iowa. The Truck Series are not racing this weekend, but they will be back in action in a couple of weeks. But we do have O'Reilly Series and NASCAR Cup Series action this coming weekend in Iowa. And speaking of the O'Reilly Series, Richard Childress Racing top prospect Carson Brown will be making his NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series debut this weekend at Iowa, driving the number 32 car for Jordan Anderson Racing. If you weren't aware of the story behind Carson Brown, last offseason he was signed to a development deal with Richard Childress Racing. He's a dirt prospect from New London, North Carolina. He's only 18 years old. He's extremely young, but he's already gotten a little bit of taste of NASCAR stock cars, specifically in the ARCA Menard Series this year, driving in a select number of races. A bit of a part-time schedule, only 11 career starts, and I'll admit I haven't watched much or followed much of the NASCAR, or excuse me, of the ARCA Menard series, so I haven't been able to watch many races or see some of the results. But I did look up Carson results online on Wikipedia, so I don't know how relevant or how accurate that is. But he does have 4 poles already on the air. He's got 8 finishes inside the top 3. He earned a win at Phoenix early on in the season, and he's also been very successful on the ASA Stars National Tour so far this year. So now he will be getting his first taste of actual NASCAR stock car experience in the O'Reilly Series, driving for Jordan Anderson Racing. They are a satellite and alliance team of Richard Childress Racing in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. I believe they lease engines from RCR and ECR Engines, which is on their campus. So not entirely surprising that Jordan Anderson Racing is putting Carson Brown in one of their cars, which has rotating drivers throughout the entire year, which is that number 32 car. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Carson Brown does. I would not be shocked if this is a precursor to Carson Brown being named full-time to the O'Reilly Series next year in the RCR, one of RCR's cars, because it does seem like that Austin Hill will move up to the Cup Series full-time next season. Carson Brown would be one of the fillers for one of those rides, and then Chandler Smith also could be a candidate for one of those rides in the O'Reilly Series next season. That was a big rumor a couple weeks ago. Haven't heard much since then, but in that time, Chandler Smith has officially not returning to Front Row Motorsports in the Truck Series next season. So it does seem like all signs are pointing to him filling one of those seats in the O'Reilly Series for RCR. I would not be surprised if Richard Childress does it again with Carson Brown, like they did with Jesse Love. Put him straight from the O'Reilly or from the ARCA Menard Series straight up to the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, and have him develop and simmer down there for a couple years before he's ready to jump up to the NASCAR Cup Series. But there will be many eyes on Carson Brown this weekend, especially the eyes of Richard Childress and many RCR employees. I can say that for sure when it comes to watching Carson Brown and how he rides. Because again, this will probably be the series that he races in full time next season. Moving on, though, we have to talk about the new broadcast that we're going to be seeing for the final stretch of the NASCAR season, for the final 4 races of the regular season and through the entire 10 races of the chase. NBC and USA once again will be hopping back on to the broadcast, and they have named their broadcast crew. To no surprise, no changes to the broadcast booth, with Lee Diffie being the play-by-play and Jeff Burton and as well Steve Letarte in the booth as analysts. NASCAR Hall of Famer Dale Jarrett will also be an analyst for USA and NBC. He's been a part of that crew for many years now, being as like on a pit road analyst for the pre-race show and the post-race show. Once again, pit reporters on pit road will be anchored by Marty Snyder, and as well as Kim Kuhn and Dave Burns will be returning. And then Trevor Bayne will also be serving as a pit reporter. He will be debuting for NBC and USA. He'll be in select races driving the pace car and be the pace car analyst. So that should be a little bit of a fun experience for all the fans and Trevor Bayne at home. We saw Trevor Bayne so far over the summer working for Prime Video and for Turner when they were broadcasting those 10 races of the NASCAR Cup Series schedule. I know he's also been working with, I believe, in the O'Reilly Series, possibly. He's worked in NASCAR with broadcasting before. I think he worked with NBC and USA a couple years ago, if I'm not mistaken. So no stranger whatsoever to when it comes to NASCAR broadcasting in the Cup Series level. So exciting to see Trevor Bayne back on pit road working with NBC and USA. And then once again, the pre and post race shows will feature Marty Snyder, Brad Doherty, and Dale Jarrett with a driver guest following each race. And one thing to know about this stretch of races for NASCAR on USA and NBC is that most of these races will be on USA, and this will be kind of a new thing for USA and USA Sports, which was founded earlier this year by uh, Jeff Benke. So this was a very exciting accomplishment for them, founding USA Sports, and NASCAR is one of the main sources of content that they will be featuring on USA Sports. Now, NASCAR will also have a few races to end the year on the Cup Series side of things on NBC with Talladega, Martinsville, and Homestead Miami Speedway, the championship. Those final three races will all be on NBC. So I'm a little, discouraged to hear that USA is getting the majority of it, and it's not a lot of NBC, not a lot of big NBC. I know Daytona will be after these first 3 weeks with Iowa, Richmond, and New Hampshire, but the majority will be on NBC, which I don't know how to feel about that. With NBC Sports Network returning, I thought maybe there would be some races on there. Maybe there would be a couple big races, more than just, the super speedways in the final two. I thought those races would be on NBC as well. Maybe like Phoenix, it's a bigger market. Same with Vegas, maybe Bristol or Darlington. Some of the bigger races, I thought maybe we'll get some NBC dates, but I guess not. So that's a little bit of a frustrating thing to see, but honestly, it's going to be broadcasting by NBC. Which is the parent like company of USA, which they do a pretty good job every year, so not much complaining when it comes to that, I guess. Next up, though, we got recently an announcement from Jimmy Johnson that he'll be piloting the number 48 car in the Daytona 500 next year in 2027, which will be his final NASCAR Cup Series start, hopefully for the true time this time, because I know he made his final start at Phoenix back in 2020, but ended up not being the case. He came back 3 years later, excuse me, at Daytona. But something else came out from his old sponsor Lowe's, which was his longtime sponsor throughout his entire NASCAR Cup Series career, where it was one of the most winningest sponsors in NASCAR history, one of the most iconic sponsors in NASCAR history in late recent memory, alongside Interstate Batteries, M&M's with Kyle Busch, Anheuser-Busch Beer with Kevin Harvick, GoDaddy with Danica Patrick, DeWalt with Matt Kenseth. It's in that category of iconic sponsors at the NASCAR level. But they put out a little post on X saying that Ally or Carvana, do you guys need another associate sponsor to help with Jimmy Johnson after Jimmy announced he would be returning for the 500? And then Jimmy responded to that post and said, I'll add you to the group chat. So maybe Lowe's is, planning a NASCAR comeback, which would be awesome. They haven't been in the sport in almost a decade now, I believe. I think it was 2017 was their last year that they were on the car for Jimmy Johnson, I think. I think that's true. I'm not quite sure. But man, that would be really cool to see. It'd be the first time in 10 years that they've been on a car. Man, that would be awesome to see, to wrap it up with Jimmy's career with the most famous sponsor on the door. Now, I don't know if they would be the primary sponsor, but maybe they would share a door with Ally or Carvana, because it sounds like Ally is going to be a part of the schedule too, as well, or a part of the sponsorship as well. So I think that will be really, really fun and cool to see. Next up, though, we have some more confirmed dates for the 2027 NASCAR Cup Series schedule. Earlier this week, NASCAR officially announced that the Clash will be returning to Daytona International Speedway for a Saturday night race. It will be the Wheatley Vodka Clash, and it will open the Speed Week schedule on February 13th, leading up to the Daytona 500, which will be on the weekend of February 19th through the 21st. And then, of course, they'll have their August date, August 27th through August 28th. So there will be 3 races at Daytona International Speedway next year. Actually, when you think about it, there will be 4 with the duels at Daytona to set the starting lineup for the 500. So 4 separate racing events at Daytona, which is all going to be very exciting. But I like this move by NASCAR. They're getting back to their roots, as you would say, with all the changes that they have made. They're bringing back preseason Thunder, the annual test that happens at Daytona International Speedway that went away after COVID happened and they reopened racing. Now it seems like they're bringing that back. They've also been revitalizing short tracks as going back to their roots. Look at North Wilkesboro. They went back to Rockingham, even though that looks like it won't be happening again next year, which kind of sounds sad. And then also they're gone back to Bowman Gray and turned that into a short track, which we have more to talk about Bowman Gray in this episode because there's some new rumors that came about that track today, or not today, but earlier this week. But they do have a format that it will be announced at a later date when it has been come up. But here's a full schedule for the Daytona 500 Speed Weeks presented by Advent Health. So Saturday you'll have the Clash, the Wheatley Vodka Clash on the 13th, and Wednesday on the 17th will be qualifying presented by Busch Light. Thursday night will be the duels at Daytona. Friday night will be the Truck Series race, and then Saturday night will be the O'Reilly Series and the ARCA Menard Series races. And then on Sunday, we'll have the Daytona 500. And then for the August race weekend, it'll just be the O'Reilly Series and the Coke Zero Sugar 400 on Saturday, August 28th. It'll be a Saturday night race. So 2 Saturday night races at Daytona, which will be awesome to see. So this is, in my opinion, a really cool move. I'm excited for Speed Weeks now because it really is going to be Speed Weeks with preseason Thunder, the Clash, the duels, qualifying, and then the 500. It's going to be all awesome. But let me know down in the comments what you think. Do you support this move? Do you think the Clash should have gone to another venue? Let me know down in the comment section below. We also got some other confirmation on NASCAR schedule dates for next season from a couple SMI tracks. So Texas, Circuit of the Americas, and Atlanta all announced officially when they will be returning to the NASCAR schedule. COTA will once again be the 3rd race of the year following Daytona and Atlanta. Atlanta will be once again having the 2nd race following the Daytona 500 and as well having their midsummer race once again. And then Texas will have a triple header race weekend with the Truck Series, the O'Reilly Series race, and the NASCAR Cup Series, but they will be moving up, I believe, 1 weekend earlier than they were this year. Unsurprising, these have been, staples on the NASCAR schedules for several decades now, Texas especially, but COTA's been a fan favorite road course for the last couple years, ever since they added it, I believe, back in 2021. And then New Atlanta is possibly one of the greatest tracks on the NASCAR schedule now, with it being reconfigured into a super speedway. So great stuff to hear. More schedule confirmations. We should get the full schedule, I imagine, probably soon, within the next couple weeks, by the end of August, I would think, because it does sound like they have most of the schedule figured out, at least, when dates are going to be, I guess, if they're moving Texas up a weekend compared to this year. So maybe still figuring out a couple of the road courses, like who they're going to fill in for, since the Chicago street race, it sounds like, fell through. Sounds like they're going to be returning to San Diego. Maybe they're still trying to figure out an all-star race venue, but it sounds like the schedule is coming together very, very quickly, and we should be seeing the full schedule for the Cup Series and all the other series not too far down the road. So obviously, now that we know that Daytona will be the site of the Clash next year, this obviously posed a massive question for Bowman Gray Stadium, the host of the past 2 NASCAR clashes. The Cookout Clash no longer will be a thing. However, I have seen a little bit of chatter online that Bowman Gray is now the hot new site of a potential Craftsman Truck Series race next season, which I would say initially I was a little bit surprised to hear that, but it does make sense in my mind that Rockingham, it sounds like, won't be on the schedule next year, and some of the evidence lines up that their owners just folded their stock car racing series, the IHRA, so things could be coming for that company and Rockingham, which sucks for the track, but business is business, I guess, and the name is the game, I guess. But it does sound like that, Bowman Gray being a Craftsman Truck Series 8 makes sense with Rockingham closing down or its future being murky at the very minimum. And then potentially having it be an all-star race venue, which I mean, it could work out. I think, a Cup Series All-Star race at Bowman Gray definitely works out better than a Bowman Gray Clash event in the middle or the late stages of winter. We saw how well that worked out this year with all the weather that affected that race earlier this year. But I'm not so sure about the Truck Series going to Bowman Gray because one, I just don't think it has the facilities to support a Craftsman Truck Series race. I know it's local, it's in the backyard of a lot of NASCAR teams, especially for these smaller truck organizations. But I just don't know if it can handle one, that many trucks, and two, all these reckless drivers, these reckless young short track drivers. I don't think it can handle that. And the facilities again, they had to freaking do tech inspection for the Cup Series with the Clash in a like garage that was, not too was I wasn't even on site of Bowman Gray, so I just don't know if the Clash or excuse me, a Truck Series event at Bowman Gray makes sense. I'm all for an all-star race at Bowman Gray. Get a smaller field there. I think it makes perfect sense. I just don't know how I feel about a Craftsman Truck Series race date at Bowman Gray. I could be the only one sharing that sentiment. I know the Craftsman Truck Series drivers have gotten a little bit better in terms of maturity, but I can't imagine that will stick. And there's always going to be an outlier, I guess. And maybe that will be Bowman Gray next year. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of it, but now that we're getting rumors about it, I wouldn't be shocked if it does happen. I don't see, it supporting a triple header race weekend like we saw at Dover. So we'll have to wait and see. Again, I will say this though. Bowman Gray being the site of an All-Star race and having a Craftsman Truck Series race potentially in the same weekend, I mean, it can't be worse than Dover. That's all I'm going to say. It can't be worse than Dover. Alrighty, though. Let's move on to the final segment of today's show, though. Let's take a look at the chase standings for all three series in NASCAR. Starting with the Craftsman Truck Series, they are off this weekend in Iowa, but they will be returning to action in Richmond next weekend after Iowa. But taking a look at the chase standings, 5 drivers are locked in. Lane Riggs, Kane Honeycutt, Chandler Smith, Christian Eckes, and Gio Ruggiero, they are all locked in. Meanwhile, Majeski, Ben Rhodes, Grant Enfinger, Daniel Hemrick, and Stuart Friesen are all not locked in. Tyler Ankrum in the 18 truck is the first driver out. He is out by 8 points to Stuart Friesen. And then Jake Garcia is out by 32 points. Andres Perez is out by 42 points. And then Brendan Queen is out by 43. And then there's a little bit of a points gap back to Justin Haley and Tanner Gray. But we'll see which of those those 6 drivers out of the chase can make some noise. I imagine Ankrum and Garcia, 2 drivers that made the chase or the playoffs last year, will be desperately looking to get back inside the chase this season, knocking out guys like Friesen, Hemrick, and Enfinger. Both guys, though, have been running very solid as of late, especially Enfinger and Hemrick. They have turned their seasons around in a big way. And then looking at the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, they'll be running this weekend at Iowa. Allgaier, Kvapil, Jesse Love, Creed, Day, Jones, and Austin Hill, they are all locked in to the chase. So those 7 drivers are locked in. And then the next 5, Sammy Smith, Parker Retzloff, Sam Mayer, Brent Cruz, and Taylor Gray are all not safe yet. Gray is the last driver in. William Sawalch's teammate is the first driver out. He's out by 7 points. Then Raja Karuth back in 14th is out by 20. Ryan Sieg is out by 74 points. So a lot of points to be made up there. And then Anthony Alfredo out by a lot more, over 100 points. So looking a little bit unlikely if you're Anthony Alfredo and Ryan Sieg, unless you really flip another switch and turn things around in an instant. But realistically, I'm looking at Sawalch and Karuth as the 2 drivers that can really contend with Taylor Gray and Brent Cruz to make the chase. And then looking at the NASCAR Cup Series here, only 4 drivers are locked into the chase, those being Denny Hamlin, Tyler Reddick, Ryan Blaney, and Ty Gibbs. Curiously, no Chevys are locked into the chase so far yet, but Carson Hocevar is not too far out of there. Same with Chase Elliott, Briscoe, Larson, Busher, Bell, Suarez, Byron, Logano, Bubba Wallace, Shane Van Gisbergen, and Austin Cindric are the rest of the drivers that are not locked in to the chase. Cindric is the last driver in. He is up by 38 points on the 60 of Ryan Preece. So a lot of ground to be made up there for the 60 team. And then Eric Jones is out by 44 points, so a little bit of ground there for the 43 team. And then Brad Keselowski is out by 50 points, so a little bit of a points gap back to Brad Keselowski and at number 16. And then a much bigger gap back to Michael McDowell. He is out, excuse me, by 76 points. A lot of points back there. And then Chastain, Allmendinger, Gilliland, Zane Smith, much more points to be made up there. With only 4 races left to go, they're not mathematically eliminated, but at this point, it's all but true to say that, yeah, it's pretty much unlikely that they'll make it in unless they go ahead and win 2 back-to-back races to make up a whole bunch of points, but that doesn't seem very likely. But out of these names, Priest, Jones, and Keselowski, those are the 3 guys that I'm really looking at closely because they can really get hot at any moment in the NASCAR races and really change things around and turn things on their head. Ryan Priest, I think, will have a good couple weeks with a lot of short tracks coming up with Iowa this weekend. We'll have Richmond next weekend. We'll have New Hampshire coming up in a couple weeks. And then, of course, Daytona. Even though Priest does not have a very good track record there with the amount of times he's flipped about down the back straightaway instead of finishing inside the top 10. Sorry, Ryan. Priest is still an RFK. They're still good on super speedways. He just needs to get lucky, man. It's not nothing more than bad luck that Ryan Priest has had, 2 flips at Daytona in the summer races. Or one was in the Daytona 500, I guess. So both have happened at Daytona, not the summer races. The worst one, though, was at it was in the summer race back in 2023. If you were watching that race, you probably don't know what I'm talking about, but yeah, it was bad. Eric Jones is kind of just a wild card. He can, show up in a random weekend, make up a whole bunch of points. Daytona, definitely he can do that because he's a pretty solid super speedway racer. If Eric Jones can just kind of maintain where he is and have a chance at Daytona, I wouldn't say that it's impossible that Eric Jones makes it into the chase with everything that can go wrong at Daytona. And then Brad Keselowski, again, he's a good short track racer. Ford and RFK have been very solid on short tracks. 3 straight short tracks coming up. And then Daytona, he's a great super speedway racer. He's won most of his races in his career on super speedways, and some are coming at Talladega mostly, but he's a very good pusher, very good blocker at Daytona as well. So again, if Keselowski can just kind of maintain, maybe close the gap a little bit, I think he'll have a chance at Daytona as well. And if I had to pick 3 drivers to fall out, I might have to say Bubba Wallace, SVG, and Austin Cindric. There's no road courses for SVG. He can do well on short tracks. I've seen it. We saw him do really well at New Hampshire last year, so maybe he'll be able to maintain there. I'm just not sure. Cindric, a lot seems to go wrong for Cindric at Daytona, and then he's just been fine overall. He's had 13th and 14th place finishes everywhere else. I don't know if that'll be enough to keep him in there. It may be enough to maintain where he's at, but it might not be enough to, keep him in there in case, something goes wrong at one of those tracks and someone else has a better finish. I'm not sure. And then Bubba Wallace, yeah, he's been really struggling as of late. Logano is not safe either. But I will say with the short tracks and the super speedway, I'd say Logano's more safe than any of those 3, especially even his teammate of Cindric and Wallace, because Wallace has just been slumping and super inconsistent. I think those 3 are the prime candidates to not make it into the chase, which is crazy because Bubba Wallace started off the year so good, but then has just fallen off over the summer. I don't know if he'll be able to make it in. It's going to be close for that 23 team of Bubba Wallace. But let me know down in the comments who you think makes it into the chase in all 3 series. Who on the bubble makes it in specifically. I don't want to hear, your full chase predictions because it's a little bit too late for that. But still, let me know down in the comments what you think is going to happen in regards to the chase. But I think that's going to do it for this episode of Talkin NASCAR, everyone. Hope you all enjoyed. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Thank you for taking time out of your day to tune in and check it out. If you are enjoying what you're hearing over here, make sure you follow so you don't miss another episode of Talkin NASCAR. And if you haven't checked out Talking Sports with Miles and Andrew already, I'll have links down in the description below to the Spotify and YouTube channel for that show and this one as well, so you can go explore different platforms if you would like, if you have any need to do that at all. So that's where I'll wrap it up. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you, or hear you, I guess, in the next episode of Talkin NASCAR. See you later, everyone.